Shalom, welcome to our second session. Um, Today we'll be focusing primarily on the Igbos. For those who have been able to join us also online, we do appreciate your presence with us and your support. One of the most important things is we have done the first phase of our presentation just to cover the background information. So by now you understand that the kingdom of Judah, last known address, is in West Africa. It is still there till this day. Okay, so we have covered those basics historically, a lot of evidence, government document that supports also this presentation and our viewpoint. Uh, Today, however, we'll be focusing more on the Igbo people. One of the good things about this for me is I'm excited about doing this today because I am Igbo personally. So for me, this is a personal call as a person, as an Igbo citizen, and also to be able to share our own history with the world. The African history, as I've said it before, has not been shared, it has not been told, mostly by the Africans themselves. Yes, Africans do have a history, and they can also tell their own history themselves. Okay, I think the world we live today should give more opportunity for them to be able to come up stage to share their own story. So thank you for joining us today. The Igbos. The word Igbo, we have been able to conclude that the word Igbo in the Igbo language has no meaning. So we were able to deduct that this is an ancient word that was corrupted by the Europeans when they came to Africa. And because it was the British that named most of the things, so we understood that there was a lot of translation of ancient documents and renaming of places that was not properly conducted, whether deliberately or by honest mistake. We understand that. But the name Igbo was a victim of that particular problem. Okay, the Igbos are ancient Beni Israel, which means they are the children of Jacob. The Igbos know who their father is. They don't need CNN or Fox News to tell their story because they know who their father is. Okay. One of the things that happened was when the Europeans came to Africa into inland with the Igbos. Of course, they did not speak Igbo, so you can understand how the communication went. Okay, with time, some of this misconception and also some of the problem with communicating with Europeans were in the documents, and that's what you have by the word Abo becoming corrupted as the word Igbo. In Igbo language, there is a word called Ndigbo, which means ancient people. Now, the Igbos know that they're Ndigbo, which means they're the ancient people. And I've also explained in the beginning, in the first phase of our presentation, when I was discussing about Judah and West Africa, that the Igbos, their language has ancient Hebrew preserved in it. I gave a few examples. And also, you can now be able to parallel a whole lot more language. There's been books written about this, so I wouldn't spend more time going into it. You can look this up on your own when you have some time. But it's good to know that it exists. A lot of Igbo words are still Hebrew words till this day. The Europeans came into Igbo land, and they began to interact with the Igbos. Okay. So the word Igbo, the ancient Israelite tribe have a common ancestor called Hebe or Ebe. Now, Ebed was the name used to refer to the Israelite. Now, you have to understand in ancient Israel, the people were not called Israelite, they were not called the Hebrew. The right word is Ivri. And from this Ivri came the word Abel, and Ebo followed by a mistranslation. Okay? So this common ancestor is what the people always refer to themselves as. A lot of times you see a lot of ancient documents, they will be referred to as the children of the land of Canaan. Because after the destruction of Jerusalem, a lot of them ran into West Africa, and the Africans will refer to them as the children from the land of Canaan. This is how the Africans wrote in their own document. I give an example with the Sultan of Sokoto. The Sultan was reporting to the British officers that were interviewing him at the time, and he was able to explain clearly who the people were. First of all, the British were astonished at his knowledge of the ancient scriptures because he knew some of the Bible characters. Mind you, the Bible has not made its way into West Africa at this point. But the people knew who their fathers were. They knew where they came from. They know who they are. But of course, when the renaming of places took place, there was miseducation, misinformation that created the corruption that we live in today. Okay? Moving on. So Ebed is a common ancestor of the Israelite, who also they refer to themselves by this common ancestor called Ebed. So for the Igbos, the family of the Igbos are as follows. I will start with Abraham. Abraham was the father of Isaac and Ishmael. I explained by the book of Genesis that the promise of God was to a seed, not seeds with an S. So the seed that we know that carried this promise over was Isaac, which we call Isiaku in Igbo. So this promise was then declared by God himself onto Isiaku, Isaac. And then Isaac then carried this promise over, and he was given to Jacob, whom God baptized by the name Israel. Now you have to understand, by this time the name Israel was not known to the patriarchs. So, like I said, they did not call themselves by the name Israel until Jacob was baptized by this name. Even then, they did not call themselves by the name Israel. You will remember that when they came out of Egypt, God referred to himself as Israel and Jacob interchangeably, because now they were born as a nation out of where? Africa, out of Egypt. So this is why I said earlier in the presentation that Israel is an African tribe. Why? Because they came out as a nation out of Egypt. Let us zoom in slightly here to see this clearly. If you look at modern day Igbo men, they dress in more colorful clothes, not like their ancient brothers who were in the land of Egypt, or those who just came out of the land of Egypt. Okay. Let me bring up the second slide here. You will see the Egyptians depicting Igbo men who were slaves in their land at 1400 BC. And on my right, you see Igbo men in the southern Niger area, where it's called now Nigeria. They dressed the same way as their brothers did in the land of Egypt. The people looked exactly the same. Now, what you don't know is this. When Joseph saw his brothers, as was described in the book of Genesis 42, 7-8. Let me read this out loud. And Joseph saw his brethren, and he knew them, but made himself strange unto them, and spoke roughly unto them. And he said unto them, Whence come ye? And they said, From the land of Canaan. Here goes, land of Canaan, to buy food. And Joseph knew his brethren, but they knew not him. Because Joseph now must have shaved his head bald and put eyebrows like the Egyptians do.
So his brothers could not easily recognize him, and he was speaking to his brothers through an interpreter, which means it became much more difficult for them to recognize him per look. If they looked at him, they cannot recognize him because the Egyptians and the Hebrews look the same. Ancient Egyptians. The people now in Egypt are not Kemet Egypt. They came much later in history. The ancient Egyptians are African-looking men, like the Hebrews are. This is why Pharaoh will mistake Moses for his sister's son, because they look the same. You have to understand that. Otherwise, Pharaoh will have his sister for treason. Moses looked like an Egyptian until he was told that he's a Hebrew by his brothers. Now, look also closely. These two people here are Igbos. The woman is an Igbo princess, and the man is a chief, or what they call Ozo in Igbo land. If you look closely at the edge of her ogodo, the thing around her waist, she has fringes on it, as was prescribed by the Lord to Moses in the book of Leviticus. Now, what you don't know is this. The difference between the Igbos who were in Egypt and those later on was because now they have received the Torah from Moses. Now they're wearing ogodo with fringes at the edge of their clothes. So the Igbos that Olaudah Equiano was acquainted to are much more different from the Igbos of today, because the Igbos of today have become overly westernized. They are no longer keeping to the tradition of their fathers given to them by Moses, their brother. So when you're looking for Israel, mind you, you are looking for an African tribe of men, not Europeans, not Western-looking men, African men. This is who they are. Okay, so I explained earlier. So when you people ask me the question all the time, so you mean you are a Jew? And I said, well, that depends on what you understand by the word being a Jew. Now, the word Jew does not appear anywhere in the Bible. It doesn't. The word which was translated as Jew is Yahudim. Yahudim is a person from the tribe of Judah, which I explained in the previous presentation that Judah lived in West Africa and still is there till this day. Okay? So for you to be a Jew, you have to be from a Yahudim tribe. Okay? I am Igbo. I'm also from the Yahudim tribe. Like I explained to you previously, the Igbos have a mixed tribe. So for you to be a Yahudim, you have to be from which tribe? Anybody? Judah. Very good. Good for you. But the Igbos are not only Yahudim, the Igbos are mainly Gadite family, the family of Gad. Because, like I said, the promise then went to Jacob, and then Jacob bore many sons, which then gave birth to the nation Israel as we know it today. Okay? So in these sons was a man called Gad, and Gad bore also sons unto himself, because what? Eli was born in the family of Gad. Eli is the father of the Igbos. Now, why is it important? Because the Igbos' founder was Eli. Eli left Egypt before the people were enslaved. He picked this up in the air that there's something coming. So Eli packed with his family and those who will go with him to leave the land of Egypt. As soon as Eli left Egypt, the people began to become enslaved by the Egyptians, because Egyptians were afraid of the people, that they became to multiply. They became now in their millions. So we are looking for a country within a country. So of course they had a good reason to be afraid that one day the Hebrew might overcome them, overpower them, and take over the land of Egypt. But that was not the people's intent. And as God prophesied that they will serve as slaves in a country not their own, and he will come down from heaven and rescue them. So what happened then is Eli moved to what we call the Niger area, which later became called by the British Nigeria. That's what the place is called. And also, if you look down, you're going to see Biafra. So the Igbos were the father of the people known as Biafra. I've explained earlier that the word Ifra can be used as the word Euphrates. So Biafra is a bad word from, they came from Ifra. They came from Ephraim through Euphrates. So in the Igbo people, among the Igbos, you have the tribe of Ephraim as well. So you have the Gadite, Yahudim, Ephraim, Reuben, Levite, and more other smaller tribes living together among with the Igbos. It's important to understand that. I've explained also this is why you could not call the Igbo clan Gadite, because it was not only Gadites that were living with Eri at that time. So, because the tribes commingled, every scholar will tell you this, any good scholar will tell you this, there was a commingling within the tribe. If you read also the New Testament, you recall some places in the Bible where people will go to Jerusalem to worship, and they will utter some prophecies. They were not from the tribe of Judah necessarily, but they were living in Jerusalem around that time. So you have to understand this. There was commingling with the tribe because they are one people. Okay? Any questions so far? So Eri and his brothers moved to the Niger area to set up the kingdom of the Igbos as we know it today. Eri Arwadi and Aleri. If you look at the book of Genesis 46 verse 16, these are the characters that moved to the Niger area and set up strong kingdom. The Igbos were very industrious people, very powerful. I also explained with using King Hafon as an example for the kingdom of Judah. It was a very powerful and rich kingdom. They were very wealthy. They had gold and they traded many slaves. But you have to understand, these powers did not pass in one night. They ruled for many hundreds of years in Africa. So this history, there's a lot of evidence for this history. You can look it up at your own time. Some of the documents might be in a foreign language, not English. As I said earlier, I speak Spanish, I speak German, I speak Dutch. So I'm able to understand and read some document and know what they're saying. So it is important, but do not let that hinder you. The documents are there to support this claim. Judah's last known address is West Africa, like the Igbos. So the people moved up to stay with their brothers. So even at the time they were in Jerusalem, they knew their brothers lived up in the West Africa because the Igbos were trading all the way down to the borders of Egypt. So you have to understand, this is not something that happened isolated. It was also in the commerce. A lot of traders like Edan will explain that there's a kingdom of Jewish kingdom in beyond Kush in Africa. These are the kingdoms he was referring to. Today, no scholars know where they are anymore. We are it. So what is left of it, however? After the slave trade, a lot of the Igbos were taking exile into slave, far away from their border, which again was prophesied by the prophet, that the Igbos will remove, Judah will remove far away from her borders and be sold unto Grecians for slave. So this is a fulfillment of prophecy, as we have also come to understand this.